So today we're going to be talking about Deca. So let's talk about Deca a little bit. Rick and I have a lot of experience with Deca, so let us share. So first off, what is Deca Durabolin? So a lot of you probably heard the term Deca in the gym. That's the popular name of it. It's a NOR19 compound. And what this means is that it's a 19-NOR testosterone steroid family. It lacks the carbon atom at the 19th position. So the NOR19 name was given to all these class of steroids. So that includes NPP, that includes Deca Durabolin. NPP is a short-acting version of Nandrolone. Deca Durabolin is the long-acting Nandrolone, and we'll get into the half-life and detection time later in this podcast. So the structural modification of Deca Durabolin means that on paper, it aromatizes at a quarter of the rate as testosterone. So, you know, that's kind of interesting, and we'll get into that as well in this podcast. But first, I'm going to bring in Rick. Rick is the expert about the history of these steroids, and Deca, just like a lot of these steroids, has a very fascinating history. So Rick, take it away. Tell us about the history.
Hey, what's up, guys? So when it comes to Nandrolone, this is one of those steroids that came around the golden era of steroid research. That time in between the 1930s to 1950s and the early 1960s. It was first identified, Nandrolone itself, in 1950. Now, 19-NOR testosterone, Nandrolone, is actually naturally occurring in the human body in very small trace amounts. It's mostly detectable in pregnant women, but in men, they're very, very small trace amounts. So much so that if you are a tested athlete and you get tested, you're allowed to have a very tiny amount of Nandrolone in your system because it can occur naturally. Now, in 1950, it was first identified, and then it was first put on the market for human use in 1959 as Nandrolone phenylpropionate. So Nandrolone phenylpropionate, the shorter acting ester, was first developed and put out on the market. Then Nandrolone decanoate was actually released to the public in 1962. And many of us that use steroids in the 90s, late 90s, early 2000s, we know that Nandrolone decanoate was more readily available than Nandrolone phenylpropionate. Nandrolone phenylpropionate actually came around and became more popular as some of the underground labs started popping up after 2005, 2007 is when you really saw it available everywhere. And it seems from my research, the company that was mostly responsible for the development and bringing to the market of Nandrolone, of esterified Nandrolone products, is Organon. And that's a company we're going to get into later on because they played a big part in the development of steroids throughout the late 50s, early 60s. So Organon, we're going to definitely talk about. That's pretty much the history of Nandrolone.